epigenetics. So why don't you just educate everybody a little bit more about why it's not your, it's not your genes, or it's not your, pass this down from generation to generation, but how your behavior matters.
Yeah. So the idea of the genetic revolution was happening in the 90s, and the idea that they were looking for a gene for everything. Even I remember at one point they were looking for the happiness gene. If we could find the happiness gene, then we can make you happy, right? And they were doing called the Human Genome Project. So they were looking to sequence the entire genome. So they started with an earthworm and a fruit fly, and they say, well, the earthworm has like 15,000 genes, and the fruit fly has like 20,000 genes. So the human being should have like over 100,000 genes, because we ought to be much more complicated than an earthworm or a fruit fly. And what they found, because they already knew there were 70,000 proteins in the body. So you figure 70,000 proteins. There's a few others that say like start here, stop here, and control some edits. So they were thinking 70 to 100,000 genes is what they expect in the body. They found like between 25 and 30,000. So it was this, and they couldn't figure out, how do we get 70,000 proteins from less than 30,000 genes? And they couldn't make sense of it, because the biology says one gene produces one protein, right? And that was the mistake. That was called actually called the central dogma of biology, which you don't usually think of dogma in biology. We think of dogma in religion, but it's interesting. They call it the central dogma of biology, that one gene creates one protein. But what they found was that wasn't true. So then they had to go all the way back to the drawing board and figure out why were we wrong. And the answer to how they were wrong is what you brought up, which is epigenetics. So epi means above or upon, so above genetics. And what they found is there's things that control the genes. So the genes aren't the master control of the body. The genes are more like the effects. So what actually controls the genes? And that's where we start getting into food choices. That's where we start getting into lifestyle. That's what we start getting into what you eat, that actually controls your genes. So people say, I love the story. I have rheumatoid arthritis because my family does. Okay, who in your family? Well, my great Aunt Sally. Okay, but just her? You know what I mean? It's like, just because great Aunt Sally had rheumatoid arthritis, now you're destined to get it? I don't think that's true.
Or my family has a high level of cholesterol, or my family has high blood pressure, or whatever.
And statistically, genetic genes count for about 3 to 5% of all disease. You look at heart disease, you look at cancer, you look at things others. There are true genetic diseases, like Down syndrome would be one. That's a true genetic disease. But most diseases, it's 3 to 5% of all disease is genetic. So the question is, if diseases do run in families, which totally happens, that absolutely true. You have tons of people. What else runs in families other than genes? The way you handle stress, the way you eat, what kinds of food you eat. Do you exercise? Do you not? All of those things also get passed down from family member to family members, and can be much more powerful than the genes.
Well, I like how you said it's above the genes.
Exactly.
It's easy to I think, for people to comprehend that it's above. So if it's above, that means I have control. My behavior is also. So for example, like in my wife's family, cancer is very prevalent.
Yeah.
Her mother died at 60. All of her aunts died before 60. So obviously it's a big red flag. But again, everybody has that genetic footprint. But what can we do? And I think that's the point when you're talking about this here, is that there is opportunities to change.
Yeah.
And whether it's the Model T, or you look at your lifestyle, that you're not doomed. If I do want a car, I don't always have to have it in black, and it doesn't have, a cruise control or whatever it might be.
There's no iPhone chargers in the original Model T, right? Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting, because again, it is the master control of the body. But I think I loved how you kind of weaved it into this whole, that, we can't be resistant to change. One size doesn't fit all.
Yeah. We
have to, like, if they have 3 people have headaches, you got to dig deeper into it and say, okay, what's causing that? And the list goes on.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. One thing to add on that, genes is, the simplest analogy for genes is just think of books in a library. That's your genetic code. Epigenetics says you get to decide which books you read.
Right.
So the books are on the
shelf.
shelf.
That's a great way to put it.
Doesn't mean you have to read it. So your mom, your wife, may have some books on the shelf that have cancer in them, but she gets to choose through her lifestyle, which one she chooses to read.
Well, and I think everybody has their books on the shelf.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to write that one down.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal that one from you.
Yeah, great.
But it's what you read.
Do you choose what you read?
Yeah.
And that's what we do. That's what you do through what you eat. That's what you do through, the wheatgrass we're having here. That's what you do through your
Yeah, I'm torturing him, but he likes it.